Tonight we're going to see a presentation, might be five minutes or so long, several slides on our stormwater master plan, which is um, underway as far as the data collection and so forth. And I'm not going to take away any of the thunder from and more an associates team that is here. So I'm not, all I can say is a comprehensive effort that looks at all the neighborhoods throughout Dania Beach, look at the interconnectedness of those systems where there are systems under the ground, drainage structures, looks at topography, meaning the heights and elevations, looks at the effect of the topography and the sheet flow of water as it comes from the sky, rainwater obviously, wanted to drain. So sometimes neighborhoods can help one another depending on the system connectivity and the topography. So without getting into more than that, I want to just thank Jennifer Smith from Kenmore, Alec Bogodov. I hope I didn't destroy your name. And there's two analysts who are here with us who I won't even try to say their names, but they are doing a lot of the lifting as well, along with the lead team. So without any further ado, the Dania Beach Stormwater Master Plan, Jennifer Smith, take it away.
Thank you, Fernando. I apologize for all the delays and technical difficulties, but thank you so much for coming and being here with us tonight. We'll go run through kind of where we're at with the Stormwater Master Plan and kind of what we're doing, what it is, and then of course we need the residents' feedback at the end is why we're here tonight. So just some quick facts. Overall, this is the city limits of the whole city. Over 8 square miles, over 31,000 residents. We have a lot of canal waterways throughout the city, as well as miles of existing drainage infrastructure. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. There. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So again, just the agenda. We really want to introduce like what is stormwater. A lot of times we get calls of ponding here or there, and it's okay. The water is supposed to sit in a swale, for example. So those are some of the things that we're going to touch on. Kind of what is the stormwater? What is our scope of the project? What is the stormwater master plan? And of course, at the end, our public input. We want to know exactly what you guys observe on your streets, so we can make sure that our model is incorporating that information. And then ultimately, what's next? What's our next step? Our next workshop that we're going to have. So like I mentioned, what is a swale, right? So you can kind of see it's right off the edge of the pavement into, before your property line begins at the sidewalk, there's a patch of grass there typically on most roadways. So as that yellow line indicates, that's the center line of the swale. We actually do want the water off the roadway sitting in that swale. So it's located off the road, it captures that stormwater so the roads don't flood, and then it infiltrates back into the soil. Again, this is just from general knowledge. So from the swale, how does it get conveyed? So we want it to percolate and infiltrate back into the groundwater. If we have enough, then it goes into the drainage inlet, into pipe that's underground, ultimately into an outfall that discharges typically along through all of these canals. There are some areas of the city that have retention areas. A lake, for example, all of the lakes typically interconnect and enter into a larger canal conveyance system. So, and again, the image to the right is another little graphic. Oh, didn't do it. Another graphic just to indicate, how it's reading. Ultimately, so some of the constraints that we have related to stormwater, we have aging infrastructure. A lot of the pipes are old, they're falling apart, deteriorating, and they can't convey the amount of flow that is typically needed and was designed for at one point. Elevation constraints. So we have certain amount of storage that we want in those swales, but if we have low-lying roads and low-lying swales, we can't provide that much storage. So the elevation is typically a constraint here in the city. Obviously, if there's a lot of trash, debris, even just leaves that fall onto those inlets that you see out in the roads, those catch basin inlets, if it's full of if it's full of sediment and leaves, then it can't collect the water and it can't get to that outfall, and then you see more flooding occurring. And we also have increased high tides, sea levels, groundwater level. That's a lot of the constraints and concerns in this city. So just touching on title, what does that mean? So we have all of the city is connected via a canal system. So as the tide increases, the water levels in the canal increase, and then those outfall pipes can't get that water out of the road. So, you know, like we were showing that conveyance off of the road, it can't get out because those water levels that keep getting higher. Same thing with groundwater. A lot of times we try to have an underground kind of piped conveyance system that could possibly percolate back into the ground. But if we have high water table, we can't percolate back into the ground. Same with the swales. Those swales don't work if that water table is too high. So again, these are just some constraints and some graphics just for you know, knowledge purposes here. So one of the things to mention that we do in design is a level of service. We want to make sure that the roadways are designed to a certain elevation to make sure that, you know, the residents can pass it, and it's called a level of service. So we'll kind of go through a few slides, but for example, we don't want a stormwater system, for example, buildings. We want the buildings above 100-year storm event. So if we've heard it on the news, 100-year storm event is, you know, once every 100 years, typically, which has been happening very often lately, but there's a certain amount of rainfall that occurs, and we don't want obviously our buildings flooded at that elevation. Same thing with a 5-year storm event. We want to make sure our roads are passable. A 5-year storm event's maybe around 7 inches. So if 7 inches were to fall over 24 hours, we want to make sure that our roadways are high enough. So just an example, this is an intersection in the city, just showing right now no flooding. So this might be a 5-year storm event. We want the water to sit on the side of the road. If there was a swale there, we want it stored in that swale. As we go into maybe a 10 or 25-year storm event, that's a lot more rainfall. That's closer to maybe 13 inches of rain. That's going to flood the streets, but not into our houses. And then if you have a massive storm event, a 100-year storm event, that's where all of it's going to pond, all the water is going to sit there, but we don't want it going into our house. So these are the different levels of service that we typically provide our roadway versus how we build our houses and infrastructure. So what are we doing with the stormwater master plan? So this is just a little schematic of a certain area in the city and how we're subdividing that area for modeling purposes. So we want to evaluate that existing stormwater system. We're actually looking, as Fernando mentioned earlier, the topography of the city. We have LIDAR, there's a lot of sources available out there to know and understand how does the city operate by topography. Obviously, you know, maybe Dixie Highway where the railroad is a lot higher, and then it flows east and west, and then you have 95 that's a little higher. So a lot of the flow obviously is going from the higher elevation to a lower elevation. So we're also collecting all of the stormwater assets. We're surveying all of the stormwater inlets and pipes throughout city-owned roadways to understand how everything's connected. Where does all that water flow? If everything based on topography goes to this, you know, end of this cul-de-sac, where does it go from there? We need to know where those pipes are. And of course, one of the items is to collect all of the resident input, which is what we're going to hopefully do here tonight, that we'll touch on in a little bit. So once we have all of that information, we're going to develop an existing condition stormwater model. We're going to subdivide the city into basins that you kind of see outlined in red there and show how all of those are interconnected. So when we model a certain storm event, let's just say a 5-year storm event, we put into our model, we can actually see where that flooding would occur, where those low-lying roadways, where there are no outfalls, and we see where that ponding occurs so we can make sure improvements are happen in those areas. So that's ultimately the plan, to develop an existing condition model. And then second, we'll go into evaluating more or less a future condition model where we look at sea level rise long-term and future groundwater conditions. So Broward County has a lot of information to be able to model those accurately, following their rules, their requirements. So that's going to go ultimately into a future condition model. From there, we'll identify what is that level of service. Do we, you know, where does the roadway flood during those certain storm events? So we could identify what is our existing conditions, existing level of service, and ultimately where we want the city to be and how to make those improvements to get to that level of service that we want to provide. So lastly, we'll identify what are those improvements. What do we need? Do we need pump stations? Do we need more pipes? Do we need additional, upsizing culverts? Maybe, as it goes down to the neighborhood, there's a smaller pipe and it's kind of like a bottleneck. So maybe we have to upsize that pipe. So these are different alternatives that we're going to model in our model to identify what is the best way to improve that roadway. So again, all coming back to what we need from you guys. So we want to know, where do you observe flooding? Of course, we're going to do all of this modeling, but we want to make sure what our model is showing is matching the input that we can get from you guys. I want to confirm, is it, what level of flooding? Is it just in my swale and that's it? It doesn't typically go into my roadway. It's just isolated. Is it on the roadway, but it's still passable? It's maybe just a few inches. Or is it that heavy rainfall event where I can't even drive down on my car that day? So these are different kind of levels of flooding that we want to know what is observed on your street. Or maybe if you know of a certain street that you might not live on, but this roadway is always flooded. I can never go to my business, or whatever that location is. We want to know all of that information, and that's what we're hopefully here to collect from you guys tonight. And with that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Alec. He's in charge of our public outreach here, and they prepared this QR code that we're going to kind of walk through with you guys. We have the QR code up here in the front. We'll keep it up maybe towards the end of the presentation. We're just going to kind of walk you through how to fill this out. It's actually a survey once it pops up. And this is that information that we want from you guys here today, the residents online, and hopefully we can pass the word around to all of your neighbors so we can gather this input.
Thank you. Yeah. So obviously one of the most important parts of our public meeting is public feedback. And so we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to ask that folks use the QR code to report flooding, whether it's today or, hey, you have some great photos on your computer you'd like to share tomorrow. We would love them. The more specific, the better. So one of the best things is actually taking a rainstorm, one specific storm, and putting it into the model and verifying it with photos. So that's one of the best ways to verify a stormwater model. So that's why we're going to ask you guys for input. And so quite simply, you can do this either on your phone or on a computer. It'll ask you your name, it'll ask you your email address, what you want to report, and kind of you can actually click or put a specific address, as well as upload photos and describe the encounter. So as specific as possible. It was up to my knee, it was my ankle deep, up to my waist. That is really helpful because it helps us understand how deep the water is. We can go back and actually put that point, compare it to LiDAR, and figure out how deep the water was. So the team's able to use that information. So that would be really helpful. We'll put that back up in a moment. We're gonna just kind of go over what's next, and then we'll come back. We have both folks online and we'll take questions in person as well.
Okay, so yes, what's next? Well, I'll just kind of recap. So we're gonna ultimately identify what those recommended improvements are. What projects are needed, like I mentioned, pump stations. We have a wide range of alternatives that we're going to model to find out what is the best improvement option to reduce that peak stage. So ultimately, we can create that capital plan for the city for 20 to 30 years out, so they know what projects are next, what houses are next, who's going to be impacted. They can request funding. All of this information is kind of stored in this master plan. Again, identify grant funding, reviewing policy. Maybe there's some policies that we need to improve on. We might review the stormwater utility fees. So that's one of the revenue streams to, prepare for these capital improvement projects. So those are all items that we're going to be looking at within this master plan. So the timing of it right here, Berlin 2023. This year, we're doing a lot of that data collection. Like I mentioned, we're surveying the whole city. We're creating that existing condition model, and we're here with you today at our first public workshop. So in looking forward into 2024, we're going to start modeling those future conditions. We're hoping in spring timeframe, we'll have a second public workshop. We won't have those results yet, but we'll start showing you what we've observed, what we've collected from you guys and what we've observed in our existing condition model. From there, we'll identify all of those recommended projects and improvements, ultimately creating that final master plan report around the summer. And then hopefully in that maybe the third quarter in fall of 2024, we'll have our final outreach meeting where we're going to say, these are the projects that we're doing. And, you know, this is the ranking and this is, you know, the order that we're going to be doing. So now we will open up to questions. I'll let Alec kind of moderate, but yeah, we'll go from in person, online, and then of course we'll be here to stay. If you want to just talk one-on-one, we have a map up here. We have some comment cards. If you're not comfortable, you know, with the QR code and doing online, you can fill it out on the comment card here, or we could just kind of talk to you afterwards and look at the map directly.
Thank you all so much. I'll put the QR code back up just so it's up for you all during this Q&A portion. So what we're going to do is we'll take some questions in the audience. We do have folks online, so we're going to have to repeat the question, and then we'll pass it to Jennifer, whoever is appropriate to answer it. So if you have questions, go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll kind of go between in-person and online. Yes, ma'am.
And we get a lot of rain. The water runs, the street does not flood, but the water runs straight down the street, through my backyard and into the canal. And my house is continuing.
So before, just to kind of reiterate the question, basically there's a specific challenge. You have a canal in your backyard. Those canals are used for drainage, and ultimately this is a challenge that you're having from an engineering standpoint.
Yeah, so yeah, so that is the conveyance. The whole city, all throughout the city, goes into a canaled system. So yes, that's yeah. So no, we want to know that information, exactly where you are. If you could help fill out the QR code, or we could talk afterwards and find out exactly where you live. So while we're doing this modeling, we can identify and make sure that we can take a look at that and how we can hopefully address that. Yeah. So the question was, when do we plan to break ground? Yeah, like I said, our schedule for our design and our modeling and everything is really just to identify where those projects are, is planned for next summer. So once we identify where those projects are, then we'll have to actually design and construct those projects. So I'll hand it over to Dinser with Public Services.
Insurers, Item, I'm the Deputy Public Service Director, City Engineer. The Stormwater Master Plan is not to start with the breaking the ground. So we're gonna basically have a short-term and long-term goal, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because we don't know what to expect. When we have the Stormwater Master Plan, then we can get it organized and make sure that we have projects there. But right now, we don't even know, because we may be installing drainage pipes on X street, but the problem might be in the Y streets because it's higher. So we don't know. That's why we have to do the Stormwater Master Plan. That's number one. So, yeah. Well,
Sorry. Question around the pump that appears that the city has.
well, we have utilities manager, but we have the automatic switch, but it has to come to some point, right? Water cannot be turning on every time that there is a little bit rain. It has to be coming to the point. but I will double check, make sure that it's working, but because that's how the system works. But also that we have a southeast drainage project is coming soon as well in that area to answering your question that that's one of the biggest projects in the whole county, not only the Dania Beach, but Broward County. Well, I can't tell you the timetable because the reason that we also remember that we all pay taxes, including myself in Dania Beach. But what happened is that we also have grants. For example, Stormwater Master Plan. 95% of the Stormwater Master Plan, that 1 point something million, we don't pay anything because it's coming from the state. We got the grants. So Southeast Drainage Project, we getting 7 point something million grants, but also tie up for different projects with the grants. So that's why I want to start right away, but we can't start because we will lose other grants. So there's some timetable on it. So we pushing FEMA, basically FDP. So, but definitely 2024, early 2024, that's our goal. We already have a contractor basically selected, but we couldn't award it. We're waiting about some grant conditions to be clarified. That's all.
So folks, we're gonna ask, you actually come up to the microphone, just so we don't have to repeat the questions and the folks online can hear you. We also have some folks online. So just, Joanna, you had a very specific, question and comment. We're gonna pass that along to the city, to look into it a little further. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us, through the Q&A function. She had just a very detailed, specific question about an incident she had with a city staff member that's not necessarily appropriate for the broader audience. So Erica asks, I also live on a canal and they lifted the floodgates to drain Davie and West got flooded. How do we prevent this in the future?
So yeah, the city's typically all connected via title. So if it's high in the ocean and the king tides are high, it's gonna be high throughout the city. But yes, we can look at that when we're modeling how the impact, upstream, if they're producing more runoff, how that's impacting us in the city. If there's additional measures. Yeah, if there's additional measures that we can do, maybe at the turnpike or, further upstream that's not connected to title, if we can hopefully maybe hold that back. I don't know, but again, this is all going to be something that we will look into at the model.
In addition to that, there's basic things that we can do. For example, we allocated $250,000 for purchasing valves and $250,000 for installing the valves. What happened is that at the outfalls, we're gonna put those valves this year about $500,000, and next year we're gonna allocate more funds. So that's the one that crucial areas that we're gonna do. These are the valves that at the outfalls that the water cannot come in when we have a high tide. But what happened is that if the canal is too high, it would be over. We may not have any solution for now, but at least that we can have some solutions for the tidal wells. Correct.
And I just do want to add that, this is the Dania Beach Stormwater Master Plan, that South Florida, we're part of a much bigger flood control system, the Central and Southern Florida Flood Control System. So some of the gates you're talking about aren't even controlled by the city, they're controlled by the Water Management District. The Water Management District is undergoing a huge study looking at all of the most impacted gates, and trying to figure out what they're going to do. That is a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar effort ongoing at the same time as well.
Quick question. Are you living in the east side of I-95 or west side? Well, what happened is that also that we have a relining project. So we are relining the sewer lines because our sewer lines are old. We may not be able to replace all of them, but we can reline it. So also we paying more to City of Hollywood to process those ones. For
This
example,
meeting is being recorded.
thank you. So good. So that's another one that. Yeah. So we realigning the sewer lines. What's gonna help is that basically not only the stormwater, but we're gonna pay less to the city of Hoboken.
Stores on my street, isn't that one handle?
I don't have the exact address, but I know the project. We can definitely.
But my question is,
Determine what else we are going to do. Nothing to do with it. But I wouldn't say nothing to do with it, but it's going to be basically, yeah.
Apologies to those of you online. We just lost audio for a brief moment.
So the main purpose. That's the main purpose.
Remember, most of the cities have the stormwater master plan. They have the old one, and they allocate some funds. Our city, we didn't have that. So we got the grant. We got that stormwater master plan. What happened is that, for example, one street, as I said before, there might be flooding X street. You're putting all these drainage pipes, but the problem might be maybe a little bit for another street. So that's what is going to be determined. Which areas are more problematic, creates flooding, right?
One second. So let me just kind of, for the, everyone online, yeah. So it was discussed the southeast, I guess, is it called the southeast drainage project? That's completely separate, so everyone's aware that that's already an ongoing, it's been designed, they have a contractor selected, maybe not awarded, but that's, yeah, so that they're working on that. That is not contingent to this. This, we're just looking at the entire city as a whole. There are other projects that I think are ongoing, either design, construction. Those are all still happening. If you're aware of any of those other ones, this is just to start collecting what's that future, you know, what's that 20-year, where should we go next? So that's what we're here collecting. And again, we're just trying to get all of your input. We're going to do all of this modeling. We want to make sure that the modeling is actually what you observed. If we don't see a problem on your street, but you're saying there's a problem, there's something wrong. We need to find out, okay, is this pipe actually maybe clogged? Maybe we have this big 30-inch pipe in our model, but if you're seeing flooding, there might be something wrong with that pipe. So these are all different checks and balances that we can do with our model by getting your input. Okay, do you mind coming up and so we don't have to try to repeat the question? Thank you.
It's gonna be a while before, I'm sorry, it seems regardless, it's gonna be a while before anything is quote unquote fixed. Until that point, can you do something as simple as putting signage up in the flooding areas to keep the trucks and the cars from going by? They create waves, and hence we have waves of water coming into our house. And I know the city of Hollywood, they have signage. Pylons marker, and it says we are a flood area, be careful, what have you. I'd love to see police out there giving tickets for pushing water in my house. Thank you.
So yes, great question. Please fill out that, when you fill out that survey, note your address and note exactly what you just mentioned, that you're requesting signage. All of this is information we'll gather. We'll work directly with Public Services. If there's anything that we can do sooner, we will definitely try to implement that.
Bill Runnable, Davis Isles resident. My question goes to the floodgate on the Dania Cutoff Canal just west of 441. A lot of the neighbors have spoken to me and said, Bill, be our spokesperson. Is there a way that that floodgate valve can just be operated to let water out when the tide is going out? A lot of us believe that the flooding that happened was when the tide was coming in, the floodgate was pumping out. Of course, the rain was coming down, and that's when we received water rose so fast. You understand what I'm saying?
No, yeah, we definitely understand. So that's like I think we said, it's not city controlled, but that's something, if we can collect that information and we can have that discussion with South Florida Water Management Districts. Obviously, Alec mentioned that they're doing a study of their own, but let's try to get that information and see it, and that might be confirmed in the model. You know, if you're observing something that we're not modeling and we're not seeing it, but you're observing it, then we know that there's something coming down from upstream that's providing that problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
I brought this one to South Florida Water Management District's attention, and they repeatedly telling me that it's a title. So we're gonna have to look into it and show it to them. It's not titled, but it's not titled. So that is what they're telling us. It's titled.
And I just want to reiterate the importance of giving us specifics while we are taking minutes today. When we have comment cards, digital comment cards, having it written so we know exactly where and when is really helpful. Once we're done with the Q&A portion, you can come up to the map, point to specific places. We'll take notes. It's just incredibly helpful as we do this process. We also want to make sure that all of your concerns are heard.
Thank you. Dave Kaplan here with Meadowbrook Phase 4. First thing I like to say, as far as environmentally concerned, I know they're talking about the runoff from pipes. They're talking about deep well injection of water for runoff concerns also. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of the tire problem we have, the General Tire, all the different tire manufacturers are being sued now because of the chemical that's used in tire construction that's hazardous to fish and now proven to be killing these species and all. And that's something that needs to be considered. I'm really against deep well injection for water that's effluent for sewers and all. I know Pompano had a crack case lining and leak sewage, water all times. Meadowbrook, we did talk already with the engineer and all. I know they're getting a check valve for our outfall for Meadowbrook for that pump house there. That pump house that he was talking about not working. Yes, there was a red light that flashed there for weeks at a time, and nobody knew what that red light was. I personally got from South Florida Water Management a set of plans that say that the pump is malfunctioning when the light is flashing. And the city was nice enough to put a sign up there now for those who can read that it says to call the water plant when the light's flashing because the pump is out. I am asking for telecommunications for that pump, that they would know at Public Works immediately, just like they do with wet wells for sewage, if the pump is out, so they don't have to send somebody out to look at that pump to know that it's not working or rely on a resident because it's not all that easy to see. We talked about the check valve for that particular outfall because the water does come into our lakes at king tides. So they do have ones they're looking at. I understand. Hopefully it'll come with the phase 2. There's just a few other issues I have besides the pump house and the backflow. I'd like to know that when they do the storm drain improvements, that they take care of our sidewalk issues. Down 3rd Avenue and some other places, the sidewalks aren't continuous. They're broken up by landscaping. They just disappear and you can't walk. It's incredible that our ADA ramps aren't throughout the whole city already. I think we're way behind on that. One other thing I had here, the utilities, abandoned utilities. I think when they're coming through and doing this utility work, storm drain work, they need to make sure they get the different utility contractors to remove their abandoned poles, guy wires, and their soil anchors. With that, thank you.
Thank you. We have a few questions online, so I'm gonna go ahead and take one now. How will this project increase our property taxes? Or if, will it?
Well, there is another program that CRS, right? Jennifer? CRS is the one that we're working on, that because when they see that we have a program that stormwater master plan, plus we adding more projects, I don't know how much it will lower the taxes, but when it comes to, you probably know. Yeah, insurance.
So yeah, a few different things there. So there, the CRS program, if we can benefit and increase that level, CRS level, we can reduce your flooding insurance policy. So that's one thing that could help. But yes, to actually implement a lot of these CIPs, we are going to be looking at what's called the stormwater utility fee. Right now, you pay a general fee into stormwater improvements. So that might be impacted, but we do not know that yet. But yes, we will need defined funding to implement all of these projects, but we're obviously looking at grants would be the number one. If we can get, there's a lot of grants out there, resiliency grants. That's exactly what we're doing. We're making the city more resilient. So for that particular project, they do. We don't know what projects are going to come out of this. So once we identify the projects, then we have to identify the funding. But that is in the wheelhouse to do.
And I'll add that this is a master plan. So at the end, there's it's a general cost of what it would be to implement over a certain number of years, let's say the next 20 years. It then goes to the policymakers, to your commissioners, to determine what to fund and when to fund it. And so this is a plan that they need to make that decision and implement.
And also that, remember, the insurance companies are looking for data. So if we provide more data, so we starting providing more data, where the areas are flooding, what we're doing about it. So it's going to be basically, we got more points. When you got more points, so if they accept our points, it's going to be lower. So that's another thing. It's not only solving the flooding problems, but also providing data to them, because insurance companies are looking for that.
I'm gonna just answer one more question online, and then we will go ahead and move back to in person. I think we may have covered this, but this particular person talked about in April they flooded. They live on Southeast Third Terrace. I'd like to know when the injection well project will.
Southeast Drainage Project will be started in 2024. We don't have an exact date. We have the contractor. We know which contractor it is, and we haven't awarded because there is a grant tie up to this. We have to get an approval from the FDEP in order to award it. So otherwise we would lose another $6-7 million grant, which we don't want to do. So that's why we try to push it and get that letter, approval of letter, and take it to the commission, get it executed, and we move forward. So by 2024, early 2024 is the timeline that we would like to do.
Alex Viscano, Second Terrace. I'm a little disappointed to hear about the data gathering. We've been reporting to the city since 2017 about our flood issue at our neighborhood. This year in April, when we had the flooding, it was substantial. However, we've been having this problem since 2017. If it rains 30, 45 minutes, we lose sewer. So referring to taxes, we pay a lot of taxes. We also pay an exorbitant amount of flood insurance. However, the fact that we can't use the bathroom in Dania Beach in South Florida after a 30-minute rain, to me, is unacceptable. The fact that we have to prepare, if it rains, today, it's going to rain. It's going to rain until Thursday. By Wednesday, we will not have working toilets. How is it that that's not already being considered as a short-term solution? Since 2017, the city has been out multiple times and promised solutions. There's been zero improvements. We've spent thousands of dollars individually, but I can't fix the sewer for the whole neighborhood. So I need some assurance from the city that this is being addressed. Because these meetings are nice, but if we're still, what did you say, 24? So we're 2 years away of more constant flooding. Again, two days from now, we won't have working toilets. So what is a solution for that? Thanks.
My question, you're living in east side or west side of Highland? So what happened is that also remember, sewer problem is not only the sewer lines. So we have lift station problems. All these years, none of the sewer lift stations have been well, I wouldn't say none. We have total 17, and we have to replace 9 of them. So we have 8 newer sewer lift stations. We have to replace 9 of them. Sewer lift station is number 1, and then relining the pipes are number 2. And then also that City of Hollywood has to take all that as wastewater as well. So in order system to work well, right? Because you can have a brand new sewer lift station, you can have a brand new relining pipes, and then City of Hollywood cannot take it. So everything has to be coming along little by little. So we are relining the pipes, and we got the grant for replacing 3 lift stations. We have 6 to go. So after all these things are done, then we can have a better solution. But I could. Total that we have to replace 9. We have 17 lift stations, so we have about 9 to replace. So total 7. 8, sorry, 8 of them are complete. I have a map, not with me, but yes, we have now. Well, I can provide you that map where the lift stations are. But remember, we only provide sewer, water, and sewer on the east side of Y-95, not west side. West side, Broward County provides water and sewer. We provide the drainage.
Folks, we're gonna pause the meeting for 30 seconds so IT can try and fix our microphone issue once and for all. So if you could just be patient with us for just a moment.
This meeting is being recorded.
Need to mute. All right, folks online, Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience online. We'll begin the meeting back again in just a moment. We're just gonna ask you, we're gonna go ahead if you want to ask your question.
Yeah. My name is Daryl Thomas. I'm on the southwest side of I'm on the west side of 95 and the east side of US 1. My question is, with the piping, the old pipes that's in the system, are we looking at putting a plan together to replace those pipes as well? Or, I know the master plan is just gathering data right now to understand what's happening and what we need to do. But is there anything in works that's saying, okay, we know that we have 50 years of 50-year-old pipes out there that we know might need to be replaced? Are we actually having anything in order right now to say that this is what we know we have to do?
Well, we're gonna take a look at the stormwater master plan, so it's gonna determine. So if we need to replace, we're gonna replace. If we need to reline, we're gonna reline. But relining is sometimes much easier in an area that, because there's some lot of structures, right?
I understand.
So it depends on where it is.
Okay.
We're gonna TV the lines and then we're gonna take a look at it. Maybe we don't have to replace the whole thing. Maybe we can do a little repairs.
Okay. Good. So patience, really.
Just patience.
And also to add, there are additional projects being designed out in the west area. So there may be, and depending on what street you're on, we may already have projects planned in those areas. What street are you on?
I'm on Southwest Second Place.
Southwest Second Place. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there are some projects that are, like we mentioned, the Southeast Drainage District. So there are some that are being designed and already looked at. But yeah, if you have specific, we would love to get that information, exactly where you live, what you see, and we'll make sure we take a look at that.
My wife moved in 2 years ago.
Okay.
And before we bought the house, we went around during the rainy season. We went around doing every time frame to make sure that everything was good. And what was that, the 13th of April? That day we had that big flood.
Yeah.
And, we sat there and just watched the swell get filled up. And then I said, my God, this stuff is coming up to the house now,
Mm-hmm.
And the water got up to at least the top of my thigh, and I was like, my God, so we had a concern about it, but it eventually receded. But just like the young lady had spoken about copper coming through and pushing water up into the house,
Mm-hmm.
that was an issue that we saw with a lot of our neighbors, not us, but
Yeah.
a lot of our neighbors.
No, so that's exactly the gentleman was just saying he would see and observe the level of flooding that happened and occurred on a certain day. So yeah, if you give us that day, obviously I think we all know that day, but if you give us that day and what you observed and exactly where it got to, that's something that'll just help check our model. Because if, let's just say, our model's not showing that flooding, then maybe we know that pipe, there's something wrong with that pipe, that last outfall or whatever that may be. That helps kind of QC the model process, so we know exactly what improvements are needed. Yeah.
But also that we're gonna have to be, we all, including myself living in the area, we also have to be realistic as well. So if there is a 20-inch rain within 1 hour, we're gonna get some flood.
Yeah.
So
I think that day caught us all off guard.
That did catch us all by surprise. And one metric I haven't seen mentioned is the rate of rainfall, not only the quantity. And my real reason for coming here was to ask whether or not the records exist that would tell us whether or not the square lake that sits between Sterling and the 700 block of Southwest Second Place, does it infiltrate into the groundwater? Does it drain through a culvert into the canal? Because I'm nerdy enough about water to have, when I see it's raining, go out and see that the inlets are functional. And the inlet functioned. behind our house, it discharges into that pond. But once that pond got high enough, the inlet quit taking water in, and I was standing in 18 inches of water on a bright sunny day on about the 15th of April, and perfectly clear. I could see down to the bottom of the inlet through water. I didn't know whether to stock it with fish or call you guys, but it was an unusual rain. Uh, Coral Springs had 4 inches. Parts of Davie had 7. Parts of Hollywood had 3.4. Airport had 31. We had about 25 here in Dania. It was very localized. And that's my question. Does that pond have a drain into the canal? Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't have the atlas with me right now, and as I mentioned, we are surveying the whole city to make sure we understand exactly how all of those ponds and everything's interconnected. By the sound of it, it sounds like it's still tidally influenced if the water's coming up and it's not raining and you're seeing. Okay, it's just not leaving. Okay. So yeah, please give us that address of exactly where you are or where that inlet is. If you want to fill out a comment card or the QR code, we'd love to investigate that for you and try to get that answer for you.
All right, folks, we have a few questions online, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask some of those questions to make sure we are responsive. So, will the study be covering streets that are on the north side of Sterling Road, such as Southwest 36th Terrace and Southwest 37th Terrace? The south side of Sterling is not. So the study will only be looking within the city limits for the city of Dania Beach. All right, Jose asks, there was a couple years back, a valve was installed on Southwest 34th Terrace. At first, it was working fine. At one point, someone propped open the valve. No one knows why. And now their driveway floods. Everyone points fingers. Did someone remove the valve on Southwest 34th Terrace, north of Griffin Road?
We didn't remove the valve, but I will send my crew to double check that why it is not working the way it should.
Thank you. All right, we have a question in person.
Derek Hankerson, I have a few questions. First, I want to say that we've had water issues in Dania Beach for quite some time, but I want to say that under the auspices of this city manager, Ana Garcia, we've had a team of people that are dedicated to working on it who don't seem to be running away, and that's a wonderful thing. I realize that you have to start someplace in terms of mitigating some of these problems. We have to be realists rather than idealists, but I'm concerned that we are a little circle in which a lot of what we get is managed by the South Florida Water Management District that we have no control over. Now, I know you mentioned that you're going to be in workshops and that the Water Management District is doing some overall plan. Will we as residents have an opportunity to speak to them as we're speaking to you? Because as these people talk about these floodgates, you have no control over that. And I need to know that the Water Management District understands how it impacts us, how it impacts this lady. Will we have that opportunity? Do you know if anything like that is scheduled?
As of now, we don't have anything scheduled, but we definitely gonna communicate with them to see what we can do.
Okay, because a lot of this is pointless without their buy-in. and without us learning what they're planning and what they're doing. We don't get to go and turn on or turn off the lift stations. I'm going to move on to Southeast. I own two properties. I have a house in the Southwest and a condominium in Meadowbrook in the Southeast. Now, to my recollection, over the past 25 years, we're now working on our third stormwater drainage project in the Southeast. Back in the 2000s, there was a big project in which it was supposed to tie in with the US 1 corridor stormwater. That happened, yet we still have problems. So we're now doing something else. I think you have to stay at it. It's not going to be solved tomorrow, but I also want to say there are other neighborhoods that have significant problems that we're not addressing. And I realize we have to stop the hemorrhaging. When we're bleeding, you got to stop the bleeding. And the Southeast is very low lying, but there are a couple other low lying areas that we're not paying attention to. And I'll put this in my comment card so that we can bring some awareness. This is my 8th term sitting on planning and zoning. And something happens there that I can't square. We start new developments and we dig water out of maybe some pond or lake and we make it bigger and we take the fill from that area and we stack it up to put the houses. But we seem to forget about those lakes until we have major water events. I really want us to be concerned about mapping those lakes so that we know where they are. We are not consistent with how water goes into those areas for runoff. For example, the one behind Mr. Thomas's house, he may have left, that lake is called Nelson Lake. It was created over 60 years ago, and it was created to put fill in the area where my house is on Southwest 3rd Street. Behind my house, there's an inlet, and it goes into the lake. How do we know it goes into the lake? Because we had someone come from a newspaper once when we were complaining who put a dye packet in, and eventually the red dye went into the lake. So we know it's there. Years ago, before this administration came on board, the city charged each resident around that lake $15 to keep the algae at bay and et cetera, but to keep track of the stormwater. That's not happening anymore. We don't know what happened to that process, but we need it looked into. Next, at the end of my street, we have French drains, which is a hole in which the water is going nowhere. That's something that obviously needs to be mapped, but it was a big, big problem with this huge water event. Now, I have asked if we have access to some of the canals and in terms of water being diverted there, but I'm told we don't have control over those. That's a South Florida Water Management District thing again. So again, we're back to the district. It's wonderful for us to start this and to map, but we've got to stay in touch with the districts because they literally can cut us off at the knees. We did something on the street behind me, I think to placate residents. The lake was rising. The street was flooded. For some reason, within a month after that event, the city came along and raised the sidewalk in front of a couple houses. Now, this is behind my house on the other side of the street, and I'll tell you, I'm confounded as to what that did. Raising a sidewalk will be great if you want to go to school and skip along, but in terms of mitigating the water damage, it didn't do anything about the water from the lake. The water from the street is still going over it. So I just thought it was a bit of a, maybe a hush kind of project just to shut them up temporarily. But if we could discuss that and see what that does, that's great. And I think that's probably all I need to talk about right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So I don't remember as the Public Works team that we raised any sidewalk, but we can definitely investigate. Maybe a private developer did it. I'm not sure. So we can take a look at it. So when it comes to Southeast Drainage Project, you're correct. So 2000s, what the history was, it was a design build project that's supposed to be connecting to the existing system, which is not the best solution, in my opinion, as an engineer contractor. So what happened is that we designed another project that it is connecting basically independent project. It's not connecting the federal highway or story. It's an independent project for Southeast. That's the best option. So it's not a design build project because a contractor can give you a design build project for one of them can say 3 million, the other one can say 30 million, the other one can say 10 million. It should be a design build project. So we designed that project, completed, and also the good news, another good news is that total was 880,000, 865,000 came as a grant. So we only paid about, $50,000, right? So the design has been completed and then we try to get other grants to secure other grants. We already secured about a little over $7 million. So we make it phase one and phase two. So we're gonna advertise that project soon. So you said that that's not the only area, correct? Jennifer designed and completed Southwest 42 Terrace. That project has been designed and completed. Southwest 54 that we completed. Southwest 37 Terrace. Everything is, all these are on the website. So we are ready to advertise for the second and soon 34 Terrace. Because with the second street, we get another $500,000 grant. Not only that we completing these projects, but also that we using our funds wisely. We cannot do everything in one time, but little by little we do it. But as a resident, including myself, we have to do what we have to do when it comes to swales. For example, a lot of residents that we don't take care of our swales. That's another factor that we have to take care of our swales as well to helping the drainage system because it's part of the drainage system. So when we design these projects, we also provide this rail system to show our residents that that's the one that's going to help us.
How will that information be disseminated to the residents? Because I know people that don't recognize the swale as being a water retention area.
Well, we're gonna,
So also as part of this project, we're actually working with Brazaga, we're preparing a citizen's guide.
Okay.
And that's gonna help and give a lot of those, let's get rain barrels, let's, anything that we can do and educate and help that information get passed along. That's all gonna be probably our second workshop is some of those items we're gonna be discussing. And it's just these small things that if every resident could do that would tremendously improve the city. Yeah.
Parking on the swales leads to oil on the swales, leads to compaction of the soil on the swale, which decreases percolation rate, as well.
you're absolutely correct. But also remember, we have a code is not under us, not public services, but also we have limited people, right? We have limited employees. And basically we have to watch each other. We're gonna have to talk to our residents. If not, then we're gonna have to basically bring to city's attention. So you're gonna have to help each other. That's how we're gonna solve the stormwater problems.
Hi, good evening. My name is Audrey. And we moved to 54th Court in 2019. And we got our first look at major flooding then. And we didn't have a hurricane, we didn't have a major 100-year storm. The city came in, they did the project. It was excruciating throughout the project because of all the construction that went on in the area. When our block or our street wasn't being worked on, it was used as a detour. So everybody in the neighborhood was coming through there. And when there was rain, we had the wakes. Eventually, you guys came in, you did the project. So on the day of the 100-year storm, I was coming home from work at Jackson's, came through Dania Beach, got through okay in a low car, got to 40th Avenue. And I said, they just redid this street. Everything's been completely, I saw the construction, I saw the drainage going in. They repaved, they painted, everything was beautiful, amazing. I took that left turn and didn't make it to my house. 3 blocks before I got there, the car died. So it was very frustrating to have gone through all of that construction throughout all the time that we did, and then have this major storm come through, which we know was historical. We never have seen anything like it, and hopefully we'll never see anything like that again. But it took 4 days before I could even get to my car. Walking, the water was to my waist. It was, and since then it has rained and it has flooded. Still, it's flooding, and we don't see any relief in sight. And when it does flood, once again, the cars coming through there, the wake is where the water almost comes into the house. It was very close to having come into the house. So I want to know what is being done. We were told at the time by a city employee that the pumps for the drainage were not activated in the 100-year storm. And so we don't know, does Dania Beach have control of that? What's going on and what is being done so that we're not having to continue to go through this? Because we're at a point now where we just want to leave. We really are that frustrated at this point. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I completely understand. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put, as I mentioned, tidal now at the catch basin. That is the one that is missing. We're gonna add a tidal well. And also remember, it's a system in Southwest Corridor. So we complete Southwest Corridor Terrace after that. And then we're working on Southwest 52nd Street. So that's all working in one system. But the tidal wall is the one that we have to put it because otherwise it's going to backflow back to your street. Because whenever we pump from another street, it's backing up your street. So tidal wall is the only one that we're gonna stop. So also remember, in the cities, we have to go through the procurement process. So if it is our company, we can purchase anything we want and sell it. We also pass through the states and cities and counties procurement policy, meaning that we have to advertise, we have to select these companies. So tidal wells recently, last commission meeting or the commission before, we award the contract to the tidal well company that was going to install the tidal well. So we are going to install it within a short period of time, and you're going to see improvements.
Thank you. And also just to add, so a lot of times we can only do enough on a certain street, but all of that goes north to that lake, Lake George, right south of Griffin Road. So all of 43rd, 40th, 54, all of these streets are all going to that lake. So ultimately, and hopefully in this model and this master plan, we could identify possibly if pumps are needed at that lake to make sure we pump it against tidal. Because right now it's tidally influenced. So if the tide's coming in and it's high, your street won't be able to get out because that lake is already high. So there's only so much we can do to try to convey it out. But yes, once all those canals, as everyone mentioned, the drainage district and everything's getting high, it may have to be pumped. And that's just something that in this master plan, we're going to have to identify those long-term solutions.
I want to redirect to one of the slides you initially showed us. You showed us a home and 2 streets surrounding the home. You indicated in one slide what the water levels would be like with 7 inches of rain. Then we saw with 13 inches of rain. There was another slide in which I don't think you indicated how much water was there, but my question really goes back to supposedly, when a home is built, we are supposed to catch all of the water onto our property and it's supposed to stay there. What is reasonable in terms of an amount of water staying on our property? Because I have the same question regarding the developments that are going on. I sit on P&Z and nobody really goes into this into detail. We can look at how high the properties are, but what type of water retention is reasonable? Thank you.
Before Jennifer explains, one thing that I wanted to mention is time. How quickly we're gonna get that type of rain, how many inches? You may get 20 inches of rain within 50 hours, it might not be a problem. If you got 10 inches of rain within 1 hour, it's going to be a problem. It depends on the time, but also.
So every developer is different, whether it's residential or a commercial property. So typically the residential, yes, you want to store a certain amount on site. There is actually a new policy that we just implemented recently that any additional impervious area, you're going to have to store additional storage on site to be able to build that new impervious area. But let's just say a new commercial property were to come in, it is about a 25 year is typically the 25-year 3-day is what you want to be able to store on your site and not have increased runoff off of your site. You want to make sure you can hold that on your site. And then after that is when you're allowed to discharge, into the roadway. So it's a little different, whether it's residential where you don't have a stormwater system versus a commercial property.
All right. Well, we don't have any additional questions online. I don't see any hands in the audience right now. So we're going to go ahead and do is close the online portion. If folks want to stay after and ask specific questions, fill out comment cards, they're welcome to. Again, we encourage folks online. You can scan that QR code. You also got the link in the chat. If you have any additional comments or questions, you are welcome to use that card. I want to thank you all for joining us online this evening. And yeah, that's any closing remarks, Spencer?
No, thank you so much all for coming. As you may know that our city is old and structures are old and lift stations are old. The good thing is that we try to replace all of them. We have a good team. Fernando is our director and he's old too. Yeah, he is.
But he does a good job.
And I just wanted to give you an assurance that he's a workaholic. He sent me text messages Sunday, 8 o'clock, what's going on with the Southeast Drainage Program. I was like, let me have a dinner with my mom and then I'll get back to you. So we are really working hard as much as we can. So just wanted to give you an assurance, although that we have a long way to go, we try anything and everything possible to help you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.